Shiva Purana Introduction Part 5. Shiva Siddhanta. Shiva Siddhanta flourished in the south in medieval times and even now is said to have considerable following in the Tamil country. The chief of the Tamil components of the faith were Mani, Kavachakar, Appar, Sambandhar and Sundarar, who were regarded as the four great teachers. They did not propagate philosophy, but their sole aim was to create a fervor in the heart of the people to make them turn towards Shiva, relinquishing what they, the Shiva's devotees, considered to be unsuitable forms of faith, viz. Jainism and Buddhism. Maykav does Shiva Jnana Bodham, written in the first half of the 18th century AD, is the basic text of the Shaiva Siddhanta philosophy. 2nd century AD is the basic text of the Shaiva Siddhanta philosophy. Two other works viz. Tirurundiyar and Tirukkallirupadiyar were composed by two other teachers. One of the distinctive features of Shaiva Siddhanta is that it does not contribute to the doctrine of Avatara. The author of Shiva Jnana Siddhyar 225 says that while the other gods are subject to birth and death, suffering and enjoyment, Shiva, the consort of Uma, is free from these. There is no incarnation of Shiva, for incarnation with birth, death, and other changes which are incidental to it is the result of karma and constitute samsara. This, however, does not mean that Shiva does not appear in the bodily forms. He appears in the form in which he is worshipped by his devotees. Out of his out of his great love for the souls, he comes as a guru to save them from samsara. One of the favorite themes of the Shaiva saints and hymnists is the conception of God as love and grace. There is a well-known verse of Tirumullar which says that only the ignorant distinguish between God Shiva and love, Anbu, and wisdom lies in identifying the two. Kapala and Kala Mukhas. The Kapala and Kala Mukhas sects represent two extremely horrid and repulsive forms of Shaivism. According to Ramanuja, the Kapalikas, members of Kapala sects, maintained that the man who was advanced in their doctrine could attain the highest bliss by concentrating his mind on the soul seated on the female organ. They worshipped Bhairava as the great god and attributed great virtues and occult powers to drink wine and eating disgusting substances as food. They performed human sacrifices and believed that by the practice of yoga they could achieve miraculous powers of speedy movement. The Kala Mukhas, on the other hand, believed that happiness in the world and salvation in the next could be attained by such practices as eating of food in human skull, besmearing the body with the ashes of the dead, and also eating those ashes, worshipping God as seated in a pot of wine, holding a club. Men of other castes could become Brahmanas by performing certain rites, and the one who undertook the vow of a Kapala became a holy saint. Though these sects were condemned by devout Shaivas, their following appears to be considerable since Shankaracharya, the great exponent of Shaivism in the country, had to enter into a keen contest with them. Centuries later, Ramanuja and Anandagiri took note of them. Their beliefs and practices find place in the Shiva Purana and other sacred books. The non religious literature also mentions them in one way or the other. Bhavabhuti, in his play Malati Madhava, refers to Sri Shaila as the chief sect of the Kapalikas and a female member of the sect called Kapala Kundala carried Malati in the night to the cremation ground where her preceptor Aghora Ghanta was to sacrifice her before the image of Chamunda. Shivadvaita. Sri Kantha, who was probably a contemporary of Ramanuja, expounded a system of Shaivism during the late medieval times, which was called Shivadvaita. While resembling Kashmira Shaivism in certain respects and Shaiva Siddhanta in certain others, Sri Kantha's Shaivism has unique features of its own. Sri Kantha bases his exposition on the Vedanta Sutra and Brahman with Parashiva, identifies Brahman with Parashiva, who is superior to three Murtis, viz. Brahma, Vishnu, and Rudra. Because Sri Kantha explains the relations between the world of souls and matter on, on the one hand and God on the other. On the analogy of the relations between body and soul, his system has been described as Shiva Vishishtadvaita. Sri Kantha himself calls his systems so. But unlike Ramanuja, Sri Kantha does not criticize Shankara's Advaita. On the contrary, there are indications in his writings of his leaning towards non-dualism. A careful reading of the Bhashya, a careful reading of the Shankara Bhashya will convince one that this philosopher occupies a position midway between Shankara's and Ramanuja. While theism is the pronounced doctrine he teaches, he leaves the door open for passing beyond to higher truth, viz. Absolutism. God, according to Sri Kantha, is the Supreme Lord who exercises the five-fold functions of creation, preservation, and destruction of the world, and of concealment and grace in respect of the soul, Srishtisthiti, Samhara, Tirobhava, and Anugraha. The purpose of creation is to redeem the soul, since impurity is innate in the soul, and it could be got rid of through action. The soul has to pass through cycles of births and deaths. For this purpose, the Lord conceals the soul's eternal perfection. And when by successive performance of action the soul becomes pure and is fit for release, the Lord bestows His grace on it. It in consequence, the soul realizes its own eternal nature, which in essence is the nature of God. The Thus, Tirobhava and Anugraha are the two ends in the process of perfecting the soul, and the creation, preservation, and destruction of the world are the intervening links in the chain. This is in brief the concept of Shiva under the Shivadvaita sect. Kashmira Shaivism. The form of Shaivism in Kashmira has been monism or non-dualism. The system is known by the names of Trika, Spanda, and Pratyabhijna. Trika, Spanda, and Pratyabhijna. Out of these Trika means triple principles with which the humans deal. This is called Shiva, Shakti, Anu or Sati, Pasha, Pashu. These principles are not confined to Kashmira Shaivism alone, but are also preached by other schools as well. But in the case of Kashmira Shaivism, it regards the individual soul and the world as essentially identical with Shiva and can be reduced to one. The term spanda denotes the principle of apparent movement or change from the state of absolute unity to the plurality of the world. The term pratyabhijna means recognition or the way realizing the soul's identity with Shiva. According to local belief, the genesis of Kashmiri Shaivism is attributed to Shiva himself. It is believed that the suttas were revealed to a sage named Vasugupta by the god during the 8th-9th century AD. After Vasugupta, his disciple Kallata wrote among other works Spanda Sarvasva, in which he explained the meaning of Shiva Sutras as revealed to him by him master. Another disciple of Vasugupta named Somananda composed the works like Shiva Drishti and Vritti thereon. Utpala, Ramakantha, and Abhinavagupta are the other teachers of Kashmira Shaivism who flourished during the medieval period. Abhinavagupta, who lived during 991 to 1015 AD, was indeed a noted writer on a number of subjects. Paramartha Sara is the best known work of Abhinavagupta on Kashmira Shaivism. This happens to be an adaptation of an earlier Advaita work of the same name by Adishesha. As in the case of every other school of Shiva philosophy, Shiva is the ultimate reality or the supreme god in Kashmira Shaivism. Shiva is conceived to be the immutable and ever perfect, the self of all beings and Atman. His pure consciousness, Chaitanya, absolute experience, Para, Samvit, and the Supreme Lord, Parameshwara, and the Supreme Lord, Parameshwara. He is the ground of all existence. The substrate of all beings. He is the beginningless one, and he resides in all that creates. Time and space do not limit him, for he transcends them, and they are but his appearance. He is both immanent, Vishwamaya, and transcendent. The world does not exhaust him, for he is infinite. He is called Anuttara, the reality beyond which there is nothing. In the familiar strain of the Upanishads, the teachers of Kashmira Shaivism tell us that the ultimate reality is beyond the reach of thought and language, yet both mind and speech attempt to understand and express the real in its relation to the universe. The pure consciousness, which is the supreme reality, is referred to as Shiva in the material as well as their efficient cause of the universe. This view is much the same as the one sponsored by Advaita Vedanta as regards Saguna Brahman. God or reality is the substance of which the world is made, as well as the instrument which makes it. Fundamentally, there is no difference between the cause and the effect, but while for the manifested world is non-real, for Kashmira Shaivism it is real. The Shiva Purana. Most of the topics discussed above form part of the Shiva Purana, which has, besides the Mahatmya, 7 Samhitas. Vidyesh, Vidyeshwara Samhita 1. Vidyeshwara Samhita, Rudra Samhita, Shrishti Khanda, Sati Khanda, Parvati Khanda, Kumara Khanda, Yuddha Khanda. Shatarudriya Samhita, Koti Rudra Samhita, Uma Samhita, Kailasa Samhita, Vayaviya Samhita, first part, second part. In fact, the Puranas are considered to be the pillars of the Vedic Dharma, comprising of Shruti, Smriti, and Puranas. Of these, Shruti is the foremost. Since these Puranas are based on Shrutis and Smritis, they are considered to be of utmost importance. According to the ancient tradition, Vyasa, the son of Satyavati, is considered to be the author of the 18 Puranas. But the modern scholars believe that the Puranas were composed during the Gupta and the post-Gupta period, tentatively between 4th to 8th century AD, but the scholars of Indian origin are quite doubtful about the same. According to the Indian historical traditions, the branches of the Vedas, the Brahmana literature, Shrauta Sutra, Grihya Sutras, besides the Ayurveda Samhitas are considered to be quite contemporary, because the rishis who composed the above literature are said to have composed the other Samhitas as well. Most of the topics contained in the Shiva Purana have been briefly discussed in one way or the other in the foregoing account. While bringing out the English version of the Shiva Purana, a new element of correlating the main events with the available archaeological evidence in the entire length and breadth of the country relating to the gods and the goddesses referred to in this Purana have been illustrated, on the basis of which it makes the work of a unique character. A separate list of the relevant plates has been added to it, highlighting the salient features of each one of these photographs. While every care has been taken to maintain accuracy in the interpretation of the verses, but still there could possibly be some shortcomings here and there in the expression of certain situations in the narration, which shall kindly be ignored by the learned readers, for which I shall be indebted to them. I may also add here that I have often been guided by some other Hindi and English translation works in this connection, and shall therefore remain ever grateful to the scholars for the guidance provided by their creations when the work was in progress. I, however, while concluding my work, offer my devotion and salutation to the Lord with the following verse. Vande Deva Umapating Suragurung Vande Jagat Karanam Vande Pannagabhushanang Mrigadharang Vande Pashunang Patim Vande Surya Shashanka Vanhi Nayanang Vande Mukunda Priyang Vande Bhaktajanashriyang Chavaradang Vande Shivang Shankaram. Shantilal Nagar, New Delhi, 14 January 2007.